What if I told you that the voice whispering quit in your ear isn't your voice at all? What if that crushing weight on your chest, that feeling of being overwhelmed, that sense that you've reached your breaking point, what if none of that is evidence you should stop, but rather proof that you're about to break through to a level of strength you never knew existed? Listen carefully, because what you're about to discover will change how you view every obstacle, every setback, every moment when life seems to be pushing you beyond your limits. You weren't given this struggle to destroy you. You were given it to forge you. This moment you're in, the pressure, the fatigue, the doubt that creeps in at 3 a.m. when the world is silent, this isn't your exit strategy. This is your proving ground. The truth that weak minds cannot grasp is this: no person of significance has ever risen without first being broken down completely. No empire has ever stood without weathering storms that would have destroyed lesser structures. No mind has ever been transformed into steel without first walking through the refining fire of adversity. The very resistance you're feeling is not working against you, it's working for you, shaping you, preparing you for a level of success that requires a stronger version of who you are right now. You say it's hard? Good. That means the process is working. This isn't a message designed to comfort you or give you permission to take a break. This is a declaration of war against the weak voice in your head that thinks comfort is more important than character. I'm here to wake up the dormant force that lives beneath your temporary weakness. The version of you that fights when others flee, that executes when others make excuses, that absolutely refuses to crawl back into the suffocating safety of mediocrity. Let the quitters quit. Let the fearful retreat to their couches and complaints. But you don't get to quit. You've come too far, survived too much, invested too much of your soul into this mission. Everything you've fought for, everything you've sacrificed for, everything you've dreamed of waits just beyond this temporary pain. So you don't stop here. You don't break here. You build here. The greatest leaders in history understood something that escapes the masses. Hardship isn't punishment, it's preparation. It's the universe's way of asking you a question that will determine the trajectory of your entire life. Do you really want what you say you want, or are you just playing games? Your answer won't come through words. It will come through your actions in the next few hours, days, and weeks, when everything in you wants to surrender. This is your hour. This is the moment when boys become men, when dreamers become builders, when the merely interested become the absolutely committed. Stand up inside your own mind and let the world hear your silence speak louder than their noise. Because what happens next will either confirm your greatness or reveal your excuses. The choice is yours, and the time to choose is now. Chapter 1. The Psychology of Pressure and Why Most Men Break. When the going gets hard, most people begin a dangerous mental dance with defeat. They start whispering poisonous lies to themselves, creating elaborate justifications for why stopping makes sense. Maybe this wasn't meant for me. Maybe now isn't the right time. Maybe I've already done enough. But let me speak directly to the part of you that remembers who you were before the world taught you how to retreat, before society convinced you that comfort was more valuable than conquest. Pain is not your enemy. If you understand nothing else from this message, understand this. Pain is your teacher, your trainer, your sculptor. It's not a sign to stop. It's evidence that you're growing beyond the boundaries of who you used to be. Pressure isn't a red light warning you to slow down. It's a green light confirming that you're finally pushing into territory that matters, into the realm where real transformation occurs. Resistance is the gatekeeper of greatness. It's the sacred threshold that only the few, the builders, the doers, the ones who decide their destiny rather than drift through it, will ever have the courage to cross. And here's what the weak-minded never realize. The person who walks through that threshold of resistance isn't the same person who approached it. They emerge stronger, sharper, more real. The superficial layers have been burned away, leaving only what's essential, only what's unbreakable. This is the purpose of hardship that most people miss entirely. It's not designed to punish you for your ambitions. It's designed to strip you down until all that remains is truth. It burns away every excuse, every limitation you've accepted, every story you've told yourself about why you can't, until only the part of you that is truly unbreakable survives the process. Andrew Carnegie, one of the most successful men in American history, once shared something with me that I've never forgotten. He said, "Adversity is the refining fire of destiny. It burns away the weak man and leaves only the man who is ready to lead." Carnegie didn't rise from privilege or inherited wealth. He was a poor Scottish immigrant working in a telegraph office, earning almost nothing with no apparent advantages. But every hour he worked, he watched carefully. He listened intently. He prepared relentlessly. When opportunity finally presented itself, he didn't flinch or hesitate because the fire he had walked through, the long days, the uncertainty, the low pay, the moments when he questioned whether his efforts would ever amount to anything, had already forged his mind into something unbreakable. And here you are, standing in your own refining fire. The question that will determine your future is this: what will this fire leave behind? Will it leave someone who folded under pressure, who let temporary discomfort become an excuse for permanent mediocrity? Or will it leave someone so focused, so steady, so commanding in their presence that the world has no choice but to reorganize itself around their vision? Charles M. Schwab was no stranger to overwhelming pressure. As Andrew Carnegie's right-hand man, he faced the storms of industrial competition, the roar of hostile business environments, the resistance of men who were older, richer, and more experienced than he was. But what set Schwab apart wasn't genius or natural talent. It was his relationship with resistance. He didn't fold when things got difficult. He moved swiftly and decisively. He led from the front when others were shrinking in the shadows, protecting their reputations instead of building their character. When I once asked him how he dealt with fear and uncertainty, his answer revealed everything about the mindset of a true leader. He said, "Mr. Hill, fear is like fog. It obscures your vision, but it's not solid. A man must learn to walk forward even when he cannot see clearly, because the fog always lifts for those who keep moving." You may not see your future clearly right now. You may be walking through the fog of fatigue, surrounded by the mist of doubt, uncertain about whether your efforts will pay off. But hear this with absolute clarity: you still walk, you still move, you still build, because waiting for perfect visibility is the strategy of those who never lead anything. The person who says, "I'll push forward when it's easier," will never arrive at their destination. Because ease and greatness are mutually exclusive territories. Consider Henry Ford, a man who was told repeatedly that his vision was foolish, that the automobile was nothing more than a novelty for the wealthy, that it would never replace the horse as practical transportation. Even his own engineers, the people he paid to help him build his dreams, said his idea for an 8-cylinder engine couldn't be done. The experts had spoken. Logic had rendered its verdict. Common sense had declared the project impossible. You know what Ford told them? Build it anyway. He didn't say it once and walk away. He said it over and over with increasing conviction each time until they finally did it, because Ford understood something that escapes the average person completely. When everything seems to resist your vision, it's not always the world testing you. Sometimes it's your own mind asking the most important question you'll ever answer. Do you really want this, or are you just playing game? Your answer doesn't come through words or intentions. It comes through persistence when logic says quit. It comes through relentless execution when emotions scream for rest. It comes through maintaining an unbreakable identity when circumstances suggest you should lower your standards. Ford didn't become Ford because it was easy. He became Ford because it was brutally difficult, and he kept going anyway. This is what you must understand about success at the highest levels. It doesn't come with ease, convenience, or comfort. The men who built nations, industries, inventions, and movements. They didn't accomplish their work from a place of comfort. They did it while tired. They did it while misunderstood. They did it surrounded by doubt from others and often from themselves. But they moved anyway because they had made a decision so final, so absolute, that retreat was no longer available as an option. Chapter 2, the furnace of character development. You must understand something now, perhaps more deeply than you ever have before. The pain you feel today is not punishment for your ambitions. It's not evidence that you're on the wrong path or that you should reconsider your goals. It is a process, a sacred rite of passage, a furnace specifically designed to burn away the soft edges, the hesitations, the illusions that keep you smaller than your potential. Yet what do most people do when they feel that heat? They run. They look for air conditioning. They retreat to what feels familiar and safe. But you will not do that because you were not built to run from difficulty. You were built to withstand it, to absorb it, to let it strengthen you. You were built to build, and nothing worthy has ever been constructed without paying a significant price. Let's speak plainly about what lies ahead. There will be days when nothing goes according to plan, when the voices around you question everything you're working toward, when even small steps forward feel like dragging enormous stones uphill, when your own mind joins the chorus of doubt, whispering that maybe you should pause, maybe you should slow down, maybe you should quit while you're ahead. But those whispers are not your authentic voice. They are the voice of drift, the voice of your old identity desperately trying to drag you back to safety, back to comfort, back to the version of yourself that never finished anything important. And you are done living like that person. You have outgrown that identity, and there's no going back. You must speak louder than those whispers. You must say with absolute conviction, no, I am not going anywhere. I may be tired. I may be stretched beyond what feels comfortable, but I am not broken. I will not fold, and I will not leave this chapter of my life unfinished. This is the moment when your identity truly changes, not with a celebration or external recognition, but with a choice. The choice to continue when continuation feels impossible. The choice to carry the weight even when your legs shake. The choice to refuse to back down when backing down would be so much easier. Abraham Lincoln provides perhaps the most powerful example of this principle in action. When he was leading a nation through civil war, he was not greeted with applause or universal support. He was attacked from every conceivable angle, mocked by newspapers, slandered by political opponents, betrayed by people he trusted. His own cabinet questioned his judgment. The people he was trying to serve doubted his leadership. The war dragged on far longer than anyone had expected, costing more lives and resources than seemed bearable. And still Lincoln stood, quiet, focused, absolutely unbending in his commitment to preserving the Union and ending slavery. He carried the burden of an entire nation's future, not because he was naturally invincible or immune to pressure, but because he had decided what must be done and anchored himself to that purpose so completely that external noise couldn't shake him loose. He was not moved by criticism because he was not seeking approval. He was not swayed by fatigue because he was not working for comfort. He was anchored to a mission larger than his personal feelings, and that anchor kept him steady when everything around him was in chaos. That is what you must become now, anchored. Anchored to your mission so deeply that temporary storms cannot move you. Anchored to your future so completely that present difficulties become irrelevant. Anchored to the person you committed to becoming so firmly that who you used to be no longer has any influence over your decisions. There will be no applause for this decision, no audience watching your private moments of choice, no instant reward for choosing the harder path, just silence and pain and progress. But make no mistake, every day you push through this storm, you are building a life that no future storm can shake. This is where you earn the right to lead, not when circumstances are easy and supportive, but now, when everything is hard and heavy and every part of your biology wants to stop. The person who continues when they could quit becomes truly undeniable. They develop a presence that cannot be faked, a confidence that cannot be shaken, a certainty that attracts opportunity and respect, because the world recognizes authentic strength when it sees it, and authentic strength is forged only in the furnace of sustained pressure. Here's what the world won't tell you because it's too uncomfortable a truth. Most people give up precisely one moment before the breakthrough that would have changed everything. They were one conversation away from the connection that would have opened doors, one client away from the momentum that would have sustained them, one new habit away from the transformation they were seeking, one more repetition, one more phone call, one more sunrise of disciplined action away from the life they really wanted. And they let it go because the going got hard. They abandoned their future because their present felt uncomfortable. They traded their potential for temporary relief from pressure. Don't let this be your story. Let this truth burn into your consciousness and stay there. You are not most people. You are not average. You do not operate based on feelings or moods or temporary states. You operate based on purpose, based on vision, based on a code of conduct that doesn't include quitting when things get difficult. That code is carved into your spirit with words like relentless, resilient, and ruthless. Ruthless in your commitment to the mission, ruthless in your refusal to let circumstances dictate your choices. Ruthless in your dedication to becoming who you were meant to be. And that code, your personal code of conduct, does not include quitting as an option. Chapter 3, The Edison Principle. Failure as information, not identity. When Thomas Edison was deep in his work on electric lighting, he had already faced over 5,000 failed attempts. The money was running dangerously low. The media had labeled him a fool, chasing impossible dreams. His own workers questioned whether the idea would ever actually work. The logical thing to do would have been to acknowledge reality and move on to more practical pursuits. But Edison operated from a fundamentally different understanding of failure than most people possess. He refused to abandon his vision because the result hadn't materialized yet. Instead, he made the results inevitable by refusing to stop. When a young reporter asked if he ever considered giving up after so many failures, Edison's response revealed the mindset that separates legends from the forgotten. Young man, I have not failed 5,000 times. I've just found 5,000 ways that won't work. Understand what this really means. Edison had already decided the outcome in his mind. He didn't need to see the working light bulb to know it was coming. He chose the result first, then committed to whatever process was required to make it real. This is what people of destiny do. They commit so deeply to an outcome that reality has no choice but to eventually align with their conviction. This is the standard you must hold yourself to right now. Stop asking whether you're on the right path just because the path involves pain. The right path hurts the most initially because it's cutting away your weakness, revealing your doubts, dragging every excuse into the light, and daring you to keep moving anyway. The pain isn't evidence you're going in the wrong direction. It's evidence you're going in a direction that matters. Henry Ford faced a similar test when he decided to create affordable vehicles for ordinary people. He wasn't celebrated as a visionary. He was laughed at and attacked by industry experts who insisted his project was impossible. Even his most trusted engineers told him repeatedly that his ideas couldn't be executed with existing technology. But Ford had already seen the assembly line in his mind. He had already felt the product in the hands of everyday Americans. He had already decided what the future would look like. So when they told him it couldn't be done, he responded with the quiet certainty of someone who knows something others don't. Build it anyway. That phrase, build it anyway, should become your motto when doubt creeps in. When experts tell you it's impossible, When friends suggest you're being unrealistic? When your own mind whispers that maybe you should reconsider? You respond with Edison's certainty and Ford's conviction. Build it anyway. This is real power. This is what separates people who change the world from people who let the world change them. It's not superior intelligence or perfect conditions or unlimited resources. It's the ability to continue building when everything around you suggests you should stop. Now, this moment you're experiencing, this pressure, this doubt, this feeling that maybe you've bitten off more than you can chew, this is the gate to everything you said you wanted. But most people never pass through this gate. They turn back. They tell themselves they'll try again when circumstances are more favorable. They create elaborate justifications for why stopping makes sense. It's just not the right time. Maybe this isn't meant for me. I need to be more realistic about my expectations. No, it is meant for you, but only if you finish what you started. Because dreams don't belong to the people who conceive them. They belong to the people who are willing to suffer for them, who are willing to build them when it's boring and difficult, who are willing to walk through the storm when the wind is screaming at them to turn back. Charles M. Schwab understood this principle as well as anyone in the industrial age. He once told me something that has stayed with me for decades. Mr. Hill, the men who run when things get hard don't realize they were often just 10 feet from the gold. I've watched this pattern repeat countless times. People who were one decision away, one day away, one act of sustained discipline away from the breakthrough they were seeking, and they quit just before the miracle. It wasn't because they lacked ability or intelligence. It was because they lacked endurance. Not physical endurance, but psychological endurance. The ability to keep going when the going gets hard. The willingness to continue when continuation feels impossible. So I say to you now, with absolute conviction, endure. Endure the silence when no one is cheering your progress. Endure the pressure when it feels like you're carrying the weight of the world. Endure the unseen hours when progress feels non-existent. Because those who continue when it's hard are the only ones who deserve the reward when it arrives. The people who achieve extraordinary results aren't necessarily the most gifted or the most connected or the most fortunate. They are the most persistent. They are the ones who understand that breakthrough is not an event, it's a process. And that process requires sustained effort even when, especially when, sustained effort feels impossible. Let these words become part of your internal operating system. I do not pause when it gets hard, I lean in harder. I do not seek escape from difficulty. I seek mastery through difficulty. Pain is not a reason to quit. It's proof that I am being rebuilt at a fundamental level. Let these principles anchor you when the path grows cold and uncertain. Let them become your rhythm, a rhythm that fear cannot disrupt and doubt cannot derail. Because the person who keeps walking, even when the light disappears, even when the applause dies, even when no one believes in their vision, that person doesn't just survive the storm. They become a storm. They become a force of nature that obstacles cannot stop. Chapter 4, The Lincoln Standard, Leadership Through Sustained Pressure. There is a secret that the world rarely speaks about openly, a truth known only to those who have stood on the edge of complete collapse and chose to keep moving anyway. Your greatest strength will always be revealed not when you're motivated and winning, but when you're exhausted, alone, and questioning everything you thought you knew about yourself and your mission. Most people think strength is demonstrated in moments of triumph, when everything is going well and success feels inevitable. But authentic strength, the kind that builds legends and changes the world, is revealed in the dark moments when every logical voice is telling you to quit, and you choose to continue anyway. When the going gets hard, your old identity begins to die. The version of you that sought comfort over character, that wanted quick results over lasting transformation, that needed constant encouragement and validation to keep moving, that version cannot survive real pressure. And that's not a tragedy. That's a gift. Because pressure doesn't just break people down, it purifies them, burns away everything that isn't essential, everything that isn't real, everything that isn't strong enough to last. Abraham Lincoln understood this principle better than perhaps any leader in American history. When Lincoln entered the White House, the country was already fracturing. States were seceding from the Union. War was not just possible, it was inevitable. His advisors wavered between conflicting strategies. Public confidence was at an all-time low. The weight of a divided nation sat squarely on his shoulders, and there was no instruction manual for the crisis he faced. But Lincoln didn't waver or look for easier answers. He didn't defer responsibility to committees or blame his predecessors for the mess he inherited. He sat with the pressure. He absorbed it. He carried the burden without breaking under its weight. And through that relentless endurance, that willingness to bear what others couldn't bear, he gave America its backbone during its darkest hour. Lincoln didn't become a giant because his circumstances were easy or because he had natural advantages that others lacked. He became a giant because he kept showing up, kept making decisions, kept leading when most people would have collapsed under the psychological weight of the responsibility. That's the kind of person you must become right now. You're not in this struggle for a convenient victory or comfortable success. You're in this to evolve, to shed everything soft and fearful and weaken your character, and emerge as someone who leads their own mind, commands their own emotions, and moves with unwavering direction regardless of external circumstances. Let me say this again because it's the foundation of everything else. The going gets hard not to stop you but to stretch you beyond your current limitations. You want real courage? It's built when your hands shake and you take action anyway. You want genuine discipline? It's forged when your body screams for rest and your mind says one more. You want unshakable belief in yourself? It's grown by continuing to move forward through days when your own thoughts try to betray you and convince you to give up. Andrew Carnegie, the man who shaped my understanding of both wealth and willpower, once told me something that changed how I viewed difficulty forever. He said, "No man becomes truly powerful until he no longer requires things to be easy." He meant this with every fiber of his being. Carnegie didn't seek the path of least resistance or look for shortcuts to success. He deliberately chose the path that demanded his entire being because he understood that greatness is born only in the crucible of sustained difficulty. The mountain doesn't get smaller as you climb it. You get stronger. And you, right now, in this moment of pressure and doubt and fatigue, you are getting stronger, even if you can't feel it yet. Even if every part of you feels like you're weakening, the truth is that your capacity to handle difficulty is expanding. Your ability to function under pressure is increasing. Your tolerance for discomfort is growing. This is why you must not retreat when things get hard. This is why you must not seek escape or comfort or easy alternatives, because the strength you're building right now in these difficult moments will serve you for the rest of your life. The confidence you're developing by continuing when continuation feels impossible will become unshakable. The character you're forging by doing what's right instead of what's easy will make you someone the world can count on. So let's make this practical. When the going gets hard, and it will get harder before it gets easier, here's exactly what you do. You do not retreat into old patterns or familiar comfort zones. Instead, you take one small action, even if it's imperfect, even if it's invisible to the world around you. Action, not motivation, becomes your lifeline when motivation fails you. You return to your definite purpose. You revisit the vision that started this journey. You read it aloud with conviction. You reconnect to the mission that matters more than your momentary discomfort. Fear multiplies in people who forget why they started, who lose connection to their deeper purpose. You eliminate the noise around you. You stop explaining your fatigue to people who've never built anything significant. You stop seeking comfort from people who choose safety over growth. You sit in silence and remember who you really are beneath the temporary emotions and circumstances. You rehearse your power instead of your problems. You repeat with certainty, I was made for this. Not because you feel strong in the moment, but because you decide to be strong regardless of how you feel. Strength is a choice before it becomes a feeling. And then you continue. You continue when no one is watching your effort. You continue when the applause stops and the motivation fades. You continue when fear whispers that maybe this isn't worth the price you're paying. Because your consistency in pain, your persistence in pressure, your reliability in silence, this is the evidence that you are becoming someone this world cannot break. Chapter 5, The Comfort Trap and the Seduction of Ease. There will come a moment in every person's journey, a quiet, almost invisible moment, when the pain becomes louder than the progress, when the goal you once declared with absolute certainty now feels like a whisper beneath the overwhelming weight of sustained struggle. That moment is not a sign to stop. It's a signal that you are approaching the threshold where most people turn back, and only a few press forward into true greatness. Let me be absolutely clear about something. Pain is not your enemy. The real enemy is comfort, the seductive whisper that tells you to settle, to ease up, to coast on what you've already accomplished. Comfort is the true destroyer of human potential because it doesn't arrive like a violent storm that you can recognize and resist. It shows up like a warm bed on a cold morning, convincing you to stay just a little longer, then a little longer, until staying becomes your permanent. Charles M. Schwab, one of the greatest steel magnates in history, understood this dynamic with deadly clarity. Schwab worked directly under Andrew Carnegie, and he rose to extraordinary heights not because he was the most technically skilled person in the organization, but because he had developed an almost supernatural tolerance for pressure that others actively avoided. When production quotas weren't being met, when tensions rose among the workforce, when problems seemed to multiply faster than solutions, Schwab didn't hide behind reports or delegate the difficulty to others. He walked directly into the furnace of the problem and stayed there until a solution emerged. Why? Because he didn't seek comfort, he sought growth. And he understood at a fundamental level that growth and comfort are mortal enemies. This is the lesson you must internalize completely. Pain is not punishment for your ambitions. Pain is preparation for your destiny. It means you are no longer operating on the level of the person you used to be. You are stepping into something higher, something that requires more of you, something that demands a stronger version of who you are. The muscles of your mind, your willpower, and your character are breaking down and rebuilding under the strain. So that's not failure, that's formation. Here's what separates the average from the exceptional. When pain increases, most people slow down. They start looking for exits. They begin justifying why quitting makes sense. They say things like, maybe this isn't meant to be, or perhaps I should take a step back and reassess. But the few who rise to legendary status take pain as confirmation that their growth has begun. They see difficulty not as evidence they should stop, but as proof they're finally doing something that mattered. Thomas Edison provides perhaps the most powerful example of this principle in action. Edison was not born into brilliance or natural genius. He wasn't handed advantages that others lacked, but he had something infinitely more valuable than raw talent, an almost inhuman tolerance for discomfort and failure. 10,000 times he failed to produce a working light bulb. 10,000 times. Not 10 attempts, not 100, not even 1,000. 10,000 failures. Imagine the mental pressure of that journey. Imagine the financial stress as resources dwindled. Imagine the public ridicule as newspapers mocked his efforts. Imagine the internal doubt that must have crept in during the dark hours when progress felt impossible. And still he moved forward with mechanical consistency. When asked why he didn't give up after so many failures, Edison said something that weak-minded people couldn't understand. I haven't failed 10,000 times. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Do you see what this represents? This is not a man running from pain or seeking comfort. This is someone who embraced difficulty so fully, so relentlessly, that the pain became irrelevant, just another part of the process he had committed to completing. If Edison could maintain that level of persistence with the entire world doubting him, with nothing but setbacks filling his hands, what excuse could you possibly have? You are not too tired. You are too comfortable with your current level of effort. You are not broken. You are being broken open to reveal strength you didn't know existed. You are not stuck. You are being called to move with more force and conviction than ever before. So here's what I demand of you in these moments when the going gets harder than you expected. Do not soften your resolve. Do not retreat into logical analysis that's really just fear wearing a disguise. Do not convince yourself that taking a break is wisdom when it's really weakness looking for permission. Lean in. Lean in so far that fear loses its footing in your mind. Lean in so hard that comfort can no longer hold you back. Lean in with such intensity that the only direction available is forward, because the person who presses ahead while experiencing pain becomes the person who cannot be stopped when strength returns. Say this now with complete conviction. Pain does not weaken me. It sharpens me. Comfort is not my goal. Growth is my obsession. When life gets hard, I get harder. When circumstances become difficult, I become more disciplined. When others look for exits, I look for opportunities to prove what I'm really made of. This is your turning point, not in your external circumstances, but in your internal identity. From this moment forward, pain will no longer be your reason to stop. It will be your reason to rise. It will be the signal that you're finally operating at a level that matters, finally building something worthy of the strength you're developing. The comfort trap is always waiting to seduce you back into mediocrity. But you were not born to be comfortable. You were born to be powerful. And power is forged only in the fire of sustained difficulty. Chapter 6, the power of repetition in identity formation. If you were to study any person whose resolve never shakes, whose decisions carry the weight of absolute certainty, whose movements feel inevitable rather than tentative, you might think they were born with these qualities, but you would be profoundly wrong. They were not born unbreakable. They became unbreakable through one fundamental process: repetition. Not talent, not luck, not even exceptional intelligence. Repetition. The deliberate, consistent, emotionally charged practice of reinforcing the identity they chose rather than accepting the identity that circumstances tried to assign them. Let me share something that most people will never understand. Your identity, that voice in your head that tells you who you are and what you're capable of, is not permanent. It's not fixed at birth or determined by your past experiences. Your identity is a pattern, and patterns can be rewritten, rebuilt, and reinforced if you do it consistently enough with enough emotional intensity for long enough. This is not inspiration or motivation. This is engineering. This is the deliberate construction of the person you were meant to become. Henry Ford understood this principle better than almost anyone in his generation. Ford had little formal education, few early advantages, and no immediate success when he started. But he had something infinitely more powerful than natural talent. He had absolute belief in the power of repetition to reshape reality. Ford's famous quote, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right," wasn't just a clever saying for motivational posters. It was the bedrock of his entire existence. He didn't repeat thoughts of limitation or rehearse scenarios of failure. He repeated possibility. He rehearsed certainty. He spoke success into his subconscious mind so consistently that doubt eventually stopped recognizing him as a host. The question you must answer honestly is this: what have you been rehearsing? Have you been practicing hesitation? Replaying failures in your mind, repeating thoughts that belong to someone weaker than the person you're becoming? Because repetition is not just what you do, it's who you become. Every time you repeat weakness, you reinforce it. Every time you repeat doubt, you build a mind that interprets the world through the lens of fear and limitation. But every time you repeat strength, even if it doesn't feel genuine yet, even if part of you doesn't believe it, you begin installing a new identity, one that does not flinch when pressure comes, one that does not fold when circumstances become difficult, one that operates from certainty rather than hope. Thomas Edison knew this truth intimately. His laboratories were not just places of invention, they were temples of repetition. He didn't succeed through sudden inspiration or lucky breakthroughs. He succeeded through the relentless consistency of showing up every day and continuing the work regardless of how he felt or what results had appeared. Each failure wasn't a step backward in his mind, it was a step forward, because it was embedded in a larger pattern of absolute commitment. Keep going no matter what. That was his identity, reinforced through thousands of hours of repetition until it became as natural as breathing. This is the mindset of mastery, and it's available to you right now if you're willing to do the work of installation. If you want to be unbreakable, when life applies pressure, don't wait for motivation to strike. Build discipline through repetition. Don't wait for courage to magically appear. Repeat courage daily until it becomes your default response to difficulty. Say it aloud every morning. I do not hesitate. I do not fold. I act without delay. Write it down. Speak it with conviction. Walk as if it's already true until the identity you repeat becomes the only one you recognize. You must begin to schedule your identity like you schedule your tasks. Not casually, not when you feel like it, but systematically. Each morning you speak who you are becoming. Each evening you confirm who you were that day. And in between, you act like the transformation is already complete. This is how people become bulletproof. Not through luck or natural gifts, but through the deliberate repetition of strength until strength becomes automatic. You do not become fearless by accident. You become fearless by choice, repeated so many times that fear can no longer find a place to take root in your consciousness. So I ask you again, who are you rehearsing? The old version of yourself who doubts and pauses and drifts? Or the new version who speaks with clarity, acts with force, and refuses to go backward no matter what obstacles appear? Choose now, and then repeat that choice relentlessly. Say it with certainty that penetrates your bones. Every day I repeat strength. Every day I install discipline. Every day I become someone who cannot be broken by temporary circumstances. This is not philosophy. This is your blueprint for transformation. Print it into your soul and live it until the person you used to be becomes unrecognizable. Because the individual who masters repetition masters themselves. And the person who masters themselves fears nothing that this world can present. Chapter 7. Pressure as the revealer of character. You say you want strength. You claim you want power. You declare you want to become someone who cannot be shaken by circumstances or intimidated by challenges. But let me ask you something that will reveal everything about who you really are. What do you do when pressure comes? Because every person talks eloquently about greatness until the weight hits, until the trial shows up uninvited, until life presses its hand against your chest and asks the question that separates pretenders from authentic power. Do you really mean what you've been saying, or are you just playing games with yourself? Pressure is not the enemy of your success. Pressure is the revealer of your character. It's the test that shows you exactly who you are beneath all the stories you tell yourself, beneath all the intentions and plans and motivational speeches you give yourself in the mirror. When you build a sword, it must pass through fire to prove its strength. When you build a person of substance, they must pass through resistance to prove their resolve. Greatness is forged not in peace but in conflict, not in applause but in silence, not when things are easy and supportive, but when everything around you screams quit and you respond with an unshakable no. Thomas Edison understood this truth better than most. The man failed over 10,000 times before the light bulb finally worked. Do you think those failures were quiet, private affairs that no one noticed? Do you imagine they didn't come with voices from the world and from his own mind saying enough is enough and maybe it's time to try something more realistic? But Edison didn't flinch because he had already made a decision that transcended feelings and circumstances. The pressure didn't scare him, it clarified him. It revealed the steel in his character. It showed him and the world that he was not someone who could be deterred by temporary setbacks or discouraged by the opinions of people who had never attempted anything significant. That's what real pressure does. It reveals you. If you fold under it, it means you never truly built the foundation you claim to have. If you run from it, it means your commitment was conditional rather than absolute. But if you rise through it, even if you shake, even if your hands tremble, even if you feel like you're barely hanging on, then the pressure becomes your birthplace rather than your grave. Abraham Lincoln faced pressure that would have destroyed lesser men. During the darkest period of American history, the Civil War, Lincoln was being torn apart from every conceivable direction. Half the country hated him with passionate intensity. His political allies doubted his judgment. The blood of brothers was spilling on soil meant for unity and prosperity. The weight of an entire nation's future rested on his shoulders, and there was no instruction manual for the crisis he faced. Yet Lincoln did not fold. He bore the pressure. He absorbed it. He passed through it because he had a vision of unity that was stronger than the pull of destruction and division. That vision, that unshakable commitment to something larger than his personal comfort, made him immovable when everything around him was in chaos. You too will face your war. It may not be fought on literal battlefields with armies and cannons. It may not be public or dramatic, but it will come. The day when your strength is not theoretical, but must be proven through action. The day when your commitment is not just words, but must be demonstrated through sustained effort despite overwhelming difficulty. And that day will define you more completely than any success or failure you've experienced up to this point. Now let me be absolutely clear about something that could save you years of unnecessary suffering. If you run from pressure, you run from power. If you avoid stress and difficulty, you avoid the very experiences that build strength. If you seek only ease and comfort, you sentence yourself to permanent weakness. But if you embrace pressure, if you see it as the opportunity to become the person you claim you want to be, then every burden becomes a tool for construction. Every trial becomes a teacher. Every storm becomes a forge for the unbreakable spine. Here's a principle that will serve you for the rest of your life. Pain is not punishment for having ambitions. It's permission to rise to a higher level of capability and character. The moment you feel resistance, that is precisely the moment when most people quit. But not you. Not anymore. Because now you understand that pressure isn't blocking your path. Every second you endure difficulty without breaking, you become harder to stop. Every moment you continue when continuation feels impossible, you build psychological muscle that will serve you for decades. Every time you choose to push forward when your biology is screaming for retreat, you prove to yourself and the universe that you are someone who can be counted on when it matters most. Say this aloud with complete conviction. Pressure does not weaken me, it reveals my strength. Resistance is not the end of my journey. It's the beginning of my transformation. Every time life tries to break me, I grow sharper and more resilient. You do not become a diamond in comfortable silence. You become a diamond under enormous weight, sustained over time, until the pressure transforms your very substance into something that cannot be scratched or broken by anything this world can throw at you. The only question that remains is this: will you endure long enough to emerge on the other side, unshaken, unbroken, and completely untouchable? The answer lies not in your feelings or circumstances, but in your willingness to repeat this commitment daily until it becomes who you are. Chapter 8, the finality principle. Deliberately mediocre action. Discipline, our trademark. There is a truth that every person who achieves something significant must eventually face, and most wait too long to face it. You cannot reach the summit of your potential with one hand still gripping the safety rope. You cannot conquer your calling while keeping a door open to retreat. If you truly want to win at the highest level, you must remove the option to lose, not just in the external world, but in your own mind. This is what I call burning the bridge, and it's not poetic, it's strategic. It's not emotional, it's essential. Because the person who leaves an escape route never commits fully. Their energy becomes divided, their mind stays conflicted, and fear lives and thrives in the presence of options. Options to delay when things get difficult. Options to retreat when pressure mounts. Options to play it safe when boldness is required. But the individual who really decides, at the deepest level of their being, leaves no room for backtracking. They burn the boat that brought them to shore. They shatter the lifeline that once represented security. They commit to the path so completely that retreat becomes literally impossible. For them, success is not a possibility they're exploring. It's a demand they're making of themselves and reality. Andrew Carnegie taught me this law through direct experience, not just words. He once said something that changed how I viewed commitment forever. A person who seeks greatness must first destroy every excuse that allows them to remain small. And Carnegie lived this principle with absolute integrity. When he decided to rise from poverty and become the world's leading industrial power, he didn't leave a back door open to comfort or mediocrity. He didn't keep a plan B that would let him off the hook if things got too difficult. He worked like his life depended on it because, in every meaningful sense, it did. Carnegie didn't chase wealth as an end in itself. He chased total commitment to a singular aim. And that commitment made every obstacle temporary, every setback educational, every criticism irrelevant. Because when you burn the bridge to your old life, you create a situation where forward is the only direction available. Henry Ford demonstrated the same principle when he faced financial collapse, public humiliation, and fierce competition from established automobile manufacturers. He didn't search for another industry to pivot into when things got difficult. He didn't entertain thoughts of failure or consider backup careers. He didn't ask himself, what if this doesn't work? Instead, he declared with absolute finality, it will work because I refuse to entertain any other outcome. That's what burning the bridge looks like in practice. It's not reckless or emotional. It's strategically essential. Because as long as you maintain the option to go back to your old way of being, you will. The moment pressure rises beyond your comfort zone, your subconscious mind will start searching for exit. If you feed it doubt, even subtle doubt, even hidden doubt that you don't consciously acknowledge, it will find a way to sabotage your progress and pull you back to familiar territory. But when you say with absolute conviction there is no going back and reinforce it through daily repetition, decision, and action, your subconscious aligns completely with the mission. It stops looking for escape routes and starts solving problems. Let me tell you plainly, you will not make it to the end of your purpose while dragging the past behind you. You will not become the person you were born to be while still clinging to the excuses and limitations of the person you used to be. So ask yourself these questions with brutal honesty. What bridges must you burn? What exits must you close permanently? What version of yourself must you bury so completely that resurrection becomes impossible? This is not about recklessness or burning actual relationships that matter. This is about finality of commitment. It's about telling your own mind, in language it cannot misunderstand, we do not turn back. We do not retreat. We do not entertain thoughts of giving up. Say this now with the full force of your conviction. I do not entertain escape routes. I do not flirt with failure. I move forward with such determination that backward motion becomes impossible. Let those words become the wall that keeps fear and doubt outside your consciousness. Let them become the foundation upon which your new identity is constructed. You don't need more motivation. Motivation is temporary and unreliable. You need more finality. You need to burn the bridge that once kept your fear alive and walk into your future with nothing but fire behind you. Because here's what happens when you remove all alternatives. The person who leaves no way back becomes the person who must find a way forward. And they always do, because they have no choice. They've made success not just probable, but inevitable through the simple act of making failure impossible. Chapter 9, the myth of perfect timing and the power of immediate action. There is a dangerous lie that has stopped more potentially great people than failure, rejection, or lack of resources ever could. It is the myth of the right time. The seductive belief that somewhere in the future, when the stars align perfectly, when the pressure fades, when the finances are ideal, when confidence arrives fully formed, then action will make sense. But let me destroy this illusion right now. There is no right time. There is only now and not now. That's it. Every other category is fiction created by fear to justify inaction. The person who waits for ideal conditions is the person who dies with their best work still trapped inside their mind, with their greatest contributions never offered to the world, with their potential buried beneath layers of someday and when I'm ready. Thomas Edison didn't wait for permission from the scientific community. He didn't wait for the perfect team, the perfect laboratory, or the perfect economic climate. He began with what he had, where he was, and he failed more times than most people ever attempt anything. But those were action-based failures, not hesitation-based regrets. And that's why he succeeded while others spent their lives preparing to begin. You must understand this at the deepest level. Motion attracts momentum, but hesitation attracts more hesitation. Every time you delay taking action on something important, your subconscious mind receives a message. This is dangerous. We're not ready. Let's not move. And it responds by wiring you with more fear, more doubt, more reasons to wait. Soon the idea that once ignited your soul now terrifies you, not because it's impossible, but because you paused long enough for fear to build a fortress around it. Henry Ford understood the power of speed better than any entrepreneur of his generation. Not speed in results, but speed in decision-making and execution. Ford once said something that should be carved into the mind of every ambitious person. You can't build a reputation on what you are going to do. Think about the profound truth in those words. Ford didn't become one of the wealthiest and most influential people in history by waiting for everyone to agree with his vision. He acted before they believed. He built before they applauded. He moved forward and forced the world to adjust to his reality rather than waiting for reality to adjust to his comfort level. The most dangerous habit you can develop is hesitation disguised as wisdom. It looks responsible and intelligent. It sounds like just being cautious or taking time to plan properly. But in truth, it's fear wearing a tuxedo. It's cowardice dressed up as prudence. And it robs people of their destiny by convincing them that tomorrow will somehow be better than today. You must kill this belief system immediately. The belief that someday conditions will be more favorable. The belief that at some point in the future you'll feel completely ready. Someday is where dreams go to die. No person becomes great by accident. No one looks back at a life of mastery and says, I'm glad I waited until everything felt perfect. Instead, they say, I moved when it was hard. I acted when I didn't feel ready. I trusted my commitment more than my emotions. I built momentum through action rather than waiting for motivation to strike. Abraham Lincoln didn't wait for the nation to achieve peace before taking decisive action. He made war with injustice while injustice was at its strongest. He made bold declarations during times of maximum division and uncertainty. He didn't ask the country to calm down first. He stepped directly into the storm because the mission mattered more than the moment. That's what you must do right now. You must begin before you feel ready. You must move even when your hands tremble with uncertainty. You must trust your identity and purpose more than your temporary feelings. Say this with absolute conviction. I do not wait to feel strong. I act and strength follows. I am not someone who waits for permission. I am someone who moves and creates permission through results. The time is now because I declare it to be now. When you act before you feel ready, something extraordinary happens that people who wait never experience. Your nervous system catches up to your actions. Your confidence builds through doing rather than thinking. Your mind begins to obey your identity instead of your excuses and limitation. This is the law of power in action. Action rewires the person taking it. You don't act because you feel ready because you acted. You don't move because you're confident, you become confident because you move despite feeling uncertain. So I challenge you to stop looking for the mythical right time. It doesn't exist anywhere except in the imagination of people who are afraid to live fully. The clock is not your friend when you use it to delay destiny. The calendar becomes a coward's tool when it's used to postpone what could be started today. Your mission is waiting. Your next breakthrough is waiting. And fear? Fear is hoping you'll think about it just a little longer, analyze it just a bit more, wait for just one more piece of information before you commit. Don't give fear that satisfaction. Move now and let the world watch in amazement as you build something magnificent without asking for permission. Chapter 10, Emotional Mastery, the foundation of all achievement. There is a reason most people fail to finish what they begin, and it's not because they lack skill, intelligence, or resources. It's because they lack command over the one force that governs every decision, every action, every moment of courage or retreat in their lives. That force is emotion. Let me speak to you with absolute clarity about something that could transform your entire existence. The person who does not control their emotions will never control their destiny. Emotions are like weather patterns in your consciousness. They change without warning, shift without schedule, and come and go with no guarantee of when they'll arrive or how long they'll stay. If your sense of direction depends on how you feel in any given moment, you will be a slave to moods for the rest of your life. You will act when you're happy, stall when you're tired, and fold completely when you're challenged by circumstances beyond your immediate control. Here's the truth that weak minds cannot accept. Feelings are not facts. They are suggestions, whispers, temporary guests in the house of your consciousness, but most people treat them like kings, obeying every emotional rise and fall as if emotion equals truth. It doesn't. Emotion is reactive. It responds to circumstances. Purpose is proactive. It creates circumstances. Which one will you choose to follow? Andrew Carnegie once shared with me something that became a cornerstone of my understanding of human achievement. The person who learns to rule themselves will soon rule many. He didn't mean rule through force or intimidation. He meant rule through example, through presence, through the ability to stand firm when others collapse under pressure. And that begins with one fundamental skill, emotional mastery, the ability to feel what you feel without being controlled by what you feel. Let me ask you something that will reveal everything about your current level of development. How often have you betrayed your own future because of a temporary emotion? How many times have you given in to fear, doubt, anger, or fatigue and chosen the easier path instead of the right path. The truth is this: it's not the difficult days that define who you are. It's who you become on those difficult days. When the pressure mounts beyond your comfort zone, when your plans fall apart, when you wake up with a storm of negative emotions raging inside you, what do? Most people retreat. They justify their retreat with logical-sounding explanations. They delay action until they feel better. They say things like, "I'm not in the right headspace today," or "I'll get back on track tomorrow when I'm more motivated." But here's the reality they don't understand. Every time you give your emotions the final word in your decision-making process, you weaken your identity. You teach your subconscious mind that feelings are more powerful than mission, that temporary states matter more than permanent goals. Soon that becomes your automatic response pattern, and you wonder why you can't maintain momentum or achieve the results you know you're capable of creating. But the person who masters themselves operates differently. They feel their emotions fully. They don't deny or suppress them, but they overrule them when necessary. They act despite how they feel, not because of how they feel. That is what separates builders from dreamers, leaders from followers, legends from the forgotten. Thomas Edison provides a perfect example of this principle in action. Edison had every logical reason to quit his work on electric lighting. 10,000 failures, public mockery, financial strain, the pressure of time and expectation, doubt from his own team. But he did not allow frustration, fatigue, or fear to become his guide. He acted anyway, consistently, mechanically, in that decision, to continue regardless of how he felt. Edison trained his nervous system, his subconscious mind, and his very soul to follow identity rather than emotion. When asked how he endured such relentless setbacks, Edison's response revealed the depth of his emotional mastery. "I have not failed. I've found 10,000 ways that won't work." Do you understand the strength behind those words? That's not just a clever quote for motivational posters. That's the discipline of emotional command in action. That's someone who has trained themselves to interpret circumstances through the lens of purpose, rather than allowing circumstances to determine their emotional state. Now let me speak directly to your situation. There will be days, many days, when you don't want to continue, when your body aches with fatigue, when your heart feels heavy with disappointment, when the outcome seems uncertain and your mind is filled with doubt about whether your efforts will ever pay off. On those days, you must act anyway. Not because it feels good, but because the person you are becoming, the real you, is not determined by how you feel in any single moment. That person is revealed by how you respond when your emotions scream for retreat and you choose to advance anyway. Emotional control is not about pretending you don't feel pain or fear or uncertainty. It's not about suppressing your humanity or becoming robotic. It's about being the captain of your ship when the sea is wild and unpredictable. It's about maintaining your course regardless of the weather. Henry Ford was no stranger to emotional storms. He was criticized ruthlessly by newspapers, betrayed by business partners, doubted by the masses who couldn't see his vision. Yet he continued to build with mechanical consistency because he had trained himself to act based on conviction rather than condition. Whether the day was easy or brutal, Ford moved forward. That consistency became his edge. It separated him from competitors who acted only when they felt inspired or motivated. So how do you build this kind of unshakable emotional control? Let me give you the specific disciplines that will transform your relationship with your inner world. First, name the emotion without obeying it. When fear rises, acknowledge it. This is fear. When anger comes, recognize it. This is anger. But then declare your independence. I do not obey this feeling. I act according to my purpose. Naming creates separation between you and the emotion. It removes the illusion that you are the emotion and reminds you that you are the observer who can choose. Second, anchor yourself to identity rather than mood. Your identity must be more powerful than how you feel in any single moment. Rehearse this truth daily. I am the person who moves no matter what. Say it aloud. Say it often. Let your subconscious hear it until it becomes your default operating system. Third, create rituals that activate power regardless of your emotional state. The greatest achievers in history didn't wait to feel powerful. They had specific practices that summoned power when needed. Andrew Carnegie meditated daily on his definite purpose. Charles Schwab began each morning by reviewing his mission statement rather than checking news or gossip. You must do the same. Create anchors, specific actions that connect you to your purpose and power. It might be reading your goals aloud, taking a cold shower, walking in silence, or making a declaration in the mirror. Whatever it is, repeat it daily because repetition creates emotional stability. Fourth, expect resistance and welcome it as training. The master builder doesn't curse the hammer for being heavy. They train with it until using it becomes effortless. When difficult emotions arise, don't be shocked or discouraged. Welcome them like an old rival. Smile and say, "You came again. Good. Let's see how strong I've become." Then act anyway. Abraham Lincoln carried the weight of a divided nation, the burden of civil war, and the constant pressure of public criticism. Yet he endured with grace and effectiveness. He didn't allow his private pain to become public paralysis. That is emotional mastery. Not being numb to feeling, but being so aligned with purpose that temporary emotions cannot detour you from your mission. Say this with me now, and mean every word. I am not my feelings, I am my decisions. I do not obey emotion, I obey mission. I feel fear and doubt, but I move anyway because I lead my state rather than being led by it. These are not affirmations designed to make you feel better. These are commands designed to restructure your relationship with your inner world. Every time you act with power while feeling weak, you build a psychological spine made of steel. Over time, the fear that once controlled you becomes a whisper. The doubt that once paralyzed you becomes irrelevant. The hesitation that once kept you trapped becomes impossible to access because your identity no longer allows it. This is the fruit of emotional mastery. You don't wait for peace to move forward. You bring peace through your movement. You don't seek calm, you embody it. And when the going gets hard, when the weight feels unbearable, you don't collapse under pressure. You rise through it. Act despite it, and watch as the world adjusts to your unshakable strength. Chapter 11, The Science of Identity, Installation Through Repetition. Let me now speak the final word, not to conclude this message, but to begin your transformation with more certainty, more power, and more fire than you have ever known. Because what you've experienced here is not the end of a speech or the completion of inspiration. This is the birth of a new identity, and that birth doesn't happen through a single moment of insight. It happens through repetition. You must hear these truths again. You must speak these principles again. You must return to this message not once, not twice, but daily, until the version of you who used to hesitate, who used to fold under pressure, who used to shrink when life got challenging, is no longer alive in your consciousness. The transformation you're seeking is not a spark that ignites once and burns forever. It's a rhythm, a daily discipline, a relentless and uncompromising reinforcement of identity until that identity becomes unquestionable. You don't listen to powerful content once and change permanently. You install it through repetition. You don't treat this as entertainment or temporary inspiration. You treat it as instruction for rebuilding yourself at the fundamental level. You don't wait for the message to return to you when you feel weak. You return to it proactively, strengthening yourself before weakness has a chance to take root. This is what every great achiever I've studied understood completely. Andrew Carnegie didn't become powerful through a single conversation or flash of insight. He returned to his core beliefs every single day. He repeated his definite purpose. He fed his mind with the same empowering truths again and again until there was no room left for contradiction or doubt. Carnegie didn't meditate on success once and expect it to last forever. He installed it as his permanent mental software through daily practice, daily repetition, daily reinforcement. Henry Ford understood this law as well. When he said, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right," he wasn't being poetic or philosophical. He was being scientifically precise. He was describing the mechanics of belief transformation through repetition. Ford installed thoughts of success so deeply and consistently that thoughts of failure had no oxygen to survive in his consciousness. He repeated possibility until impossibility became foreign to his thinking. You must do the same with this message and these principles. This content is not entertainment. It's a mirror that reflects who you really are beneath the temporary emotions and circumstances. It's a mirror you must return to daily until the reflection becomes your automatic identity. You must rise every morning and engage with these truths again. You must walk through your day with these principles echoing in your mind when the day feels heavy or uncertain. You must close your eyes at night and rehearse the lines that call you to rise above fear, fatigue, and fleeting moods. Because every time you repeat these truths with emotional conviction, you drive them deeper into your subconscious programming. You dig new grooves in the landscape of your mind. Those grooves become the paths your thoughts automatically follow. Let me be absolutely clear about the science behind this process. The person who listens once is temporarily entertained. The person who listens 10 times becomes temporarily inspired. But the person who listens daily and speaks these words with genuine power, that person becomes permanently transformed. This is the law of autosuggestion in action. This is the science of identity reconstruction. You must burn these truths into your soul through repetition until they replace every limitation, every excuse, every voice that once told you to quit when things got difficult. Say this with complete conviction. I will not forget who I am becoming. I do not allow fear to rewrite my mental programming. I repeat power daily until power becomes as natural as breathing. The truth is simple but profound. You are not weak, broken, or incapable. You are simply untrained. And the training begins with repetition of empowering truths spoken with emotion and conviction. Every person who became great, Edison, Carnegie, Ford, Schwab, Lincoln, they all discovered the same secret. If you repeat belief with genuine emotion long enough and consistently enough, it replaces every limitation that once controlled you. So I say this now with absolute finality. Do not leave this message behind like yesterday's news. Do not move on to the next thing as if this were just another dose of motivation. This is your daily discipline, your mental training program, your identity installation system. When you wake up tomorrow, you engage with these principles. When you feel doubt creeping into your consciousness, you override it with these truths. When old patterns try to resurface, you crush them with the power of these words, spoken with conviction. Because repetition is not boring, it's the chisel that shapes raw stone into sculpture. And if you want to be forged into something unshakable, immovable, and undeniable, then you must hammer these truths into your spirit daily. You will forget sometimes. You will drift occasionally. That's human nature. But if you repeat, if you return, if you recommit to these principles again and again, eventually you will wake up one morning and discover that the person who used to fear the world is gone. In their place stands someone who moves through resistance like wind through grass. Someone who no longer hopes for strength because strength has become their default state. Someone who doesn't need motivation because discipline has become their nature. Repeat these truths. That is the instruction. Not tomorrow, now. Repeat until doubt cannot find your address. Repeat until hesitation cannot enter your posture. Repeat until your voice carries the weight of unshakable identity rather than desperate effort. Repeat until your actions no longer require external motivation because internal conviction has become so strong that action happens automatically. And when the going gets hard again, and it will, you will not collapse into old patterns. You will not cry out for rescue. You will not retreat into the past version of yourself. You will stand firm not because you feel like it, but because you have trained for this moment through daily repetition. You will move forward not because it's easy, but because you have programmed yourself for resilience. When that moment of ultimate testing comes, you will not say, "I don't know what to do." You will hear these words echoing in your soul. You will feel this rhythm, this fire, this standard operating within you, and you will move forward. Because repetition built you for exactly this moment. So say it one final time with the full power of your voice. I do not need to feel ready. I repeat readiness daily. I do not search for strength. I speak it into existence. I do not listen once and hope. I live this daily until it becomes who I am. This is your final word and your new beginning. This is your rhythm and your rebirth. Now return to the start and begin again. Let these truths repeat until they become the only voice you hear when pressure comes. Because when the going gets hard, you don't get going, you get harder.